First of all, the irony of my last video, of me saying in my last video, I'm excited to do this and I feel I have the energy and the motivation and the time to do this, and then not posting again for 4 weeks is not lost on me, okay? Well, y'all, the time has finally come. Whether you are new here or you've heard me talk about this video in however many, like the last 2 or 3 videos I've put out, this is my how I read 100 books in a year and why I'm never doing it again video. So thank you for joining me. I feel obligated because I know people can get like sensitive about this. I feel obligated to put a caveat at the beginning here that like, this is my personal experience. And I don't think what I have to say will, but just in case, it is not meant to like shame anybody who does read 100 books or more. Like, it's not that deep. This is my personal experience, and I feel like in book 2, because there are so many people who do read so many books, you can feel a pressure to read that much. But you don't have to, okay? You don't have to. I'm going to start with, well, let's start with why. Why did I choose to set a reading goal of reading 100 books in a year for 2021? The answer to that is that I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. I think in 2020, when my goal was like 60 something, I read 90 some and I was like, that is so close to 100. I bet I could do it. I want to do it. So it wasn't like I felt forced or anything. It was just something that I could see myself attaining. Now, what I should have taken into account. From March to October, is that 6 months? 7 months? I was unemployed. While I was still applying for jobs, I wasn't getting a job anywhere, and I had all of the time in the world. 2021, I was employed. I was employed. And did you know that takes more time out of your day? I should have known. I should have known. So that's why I could see I was so close the year prior, and I was like, I can really do this. So I wanted to do it. I wanted to prove to myself that I could. And 100 is also just like a nice number. It's very pleasing, you know? So that's why. Let's get into the how. And this is relatively simple, honestly. There wasn't a whole lot going into it. Number 1, and I'm going to talk about this again and like why I'm not going to ever purposefully read 100 books in a year again. I had to prioritize my reading over other things. So any free time that I had, I was reading, whether I wanted to or not. I didn't really watch a lot of TV. I was reading if I had free time. The other way, which is honestly it is the only reason that I read 100 books in a year, is that I listen to a shit ton of audiobooks. Do not come in here talking shit about audiobooks. We are not gatekeeping reading that way, okay? You never used to like audiobooks because I don't retain information very well that way. So don't ask me about any of the books. I think it was in 2020 I started listening to them more. In 2021 I was fairly comfortable in them and grew more comfortable throughout. I grew to be able to pay attention and listen to them and like actually get the story. Some of them less engaging than the others, but then I think that that's reflective of the book. For the majority of my year I was working remotely, so I would listen to my audiobooks while I was working. Like I said, I would not have read 100 books in a year without audiobooks, specifically because I can multitask. That's really it. That's essentially how I did it. Like I said, it's pretty simple. I just had to prioritize it, and I listened to audiobooks. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of why I'm never doing this to myself again. And number 1, which I think is the simplest thing, is that 100 books is not my natural pace. And that's it. It was exhausting to force myself to read, certain books. So I barely read any nonfiction last year because those books take me longer to read. So I read pretty much exclusively fiction because I knew I could read through that very quickly. It makes me, like, I feel frustrated with myself about that because I have so much nonfiction on my shelves that I'm like genuinely excited to read and want to read, but then I wouldn't read them because it would take me too long to read and I would get behind on my goal, and I couldn't afford to get behind on my goal. For example, I listened to the audiobook of Promised Land, Barack Obama's memoir. Number one, that shit was boring as hell. Number two, there was no reason for it to be that long. It is a tome. It is like 700, 800. It's a ridiculous. And for it to be like part one, no reason. There's no reason. No reason. When I read that book, even on audio, it put me so far behind my goal. I remember one time I sent a screenshot of how behind I was on my Goodreads goal to my mom because I had been like venting to her about this book. I sent it to her and I was like, thanks Obama, because Jesus Christ. And so it limited my reading. It also limited the fiction that I read because these incredibly long books that I have on my shelves would take me longer to read than I could afford. So I would have like a massive book sitting on my shelf that I would want to read, but I never did. So it just wasn't my natural pace, and it really limited what I was willing to pick up, which is not the point of reading. For me at least, you know? So I mentioned how exhausted that I became. And part of that is because reading, it started to feel like a chore. I would read even when I didn't want to read, when I didn't feel like reading, because if I didn't, I wouldn't meet this fucking goal. And you might be saying, Kirsten, it's just a goal. It's okay if you don't meet it. And I had a friend tell me that too. She was like, you don't have to do it. And I was like, no. Again, like I said, it was something that I wanted to prove that I could do. And I know I could do it. It was just killing me. Yeah, it felt like such a chore, and there were other things that I wanted to do. Like I started I'm gonna expose myself for being a fucking nerd, but like I started watching a lot of streamers and I started being more interested in playing games. So there are other things I wanted to spend my time doing, and honestly did spend time doing over reading. Like, because I was forcing myself to read, I got so burnt out where I started to question. I was like, do I like reading anymore? Especially when you're reading so many books and you're not loving any of them. And I think part of this is me just like growing up and becoming an adult, but like I loved YA and I still enjoy it. But so many of these YA titles I would pick up that typically I would enjoy, I was reading and I was like, really? This? And it just gets so discouraging when you're reading so much and loving so little. And part of feeling burnt out, sometimes that burnout wasn't even coming specifically from reading so much. It was burnout or just like apathy, because I am clinically depressed. And when I have bad times, I have bad times where I don't want to do anything. I don't care about anything. Anything that would typically bring me joy, don't want to do it. I could not bring myself to read. And that's a problem when I have a goal like this, because I get so behind or I just force myself to read. And because I am in such an apathetic mindset, I don't like the book because I don't care. And then related to like reading all these books that I wasn't enjoying, I also didn't DNF many books. There were a few I did because I was just like, I actually can't. But there were so many books where I was reading, again, like specifically the YA genre, where I was like, I don't really like this. But I would be like 20 to 30% in. And that was like, it's like I'm already so far in. I might as well finish this book to check one off of the goal and move on to the next, rather than DNFing this, not having the progress I've made count, and starting something else. So then I had a shitty reading year because I read all these books I didn't like. Oh my god. So what am I doing differently this year? It all comes back to now knowing 100% that 100 books is not my reading pace. And that's fine. Creating space in my reading for my mental health. Knowing that I'm going to have periods of time where I'm not going to want to read. I'm going to be super apathetic. And while that is frustrating and discouraging, I need to have grace with myself in that and build in a cushion. And allowing myself to DNF books now. I've DNF'd several books already this year because I was reading, I was like, don't like it. And that is such a freeing feeling, honestly, truly. And I also feel so much freedom in that once I finish a book now, I don't have to immediately pick another one up. I can sit, I can take a break until I'm ready to pick up something new. And whatever mood I'm in. I can pick up a nonfiction. I've read a few nonfictions already this year. It feels good. I set my goal at 24 books, so 2 a month. Will you keep it down? I am like pretty much 100% confident I will read over that. But it's so low for me that it gives me so much space. And just like, again, allows me to read at my own pace. I feel like 2 books a month is relatively decent, even for when I am in a bad spot. Also, doing grad school and working full time. So I have way less time than before. And it just felt good to me. So that's it. I feel like I was way more fired up thinking about making this video than when I actually sat down to like film it and like wrote out my things, where I was like, I actually don't feel like I'm preaching that I like expected to do. I don't know. I think it can feel a lot of people who feel the pressure to read so many books comfort knowing that you don't have to. Read at your own pace. Read at your own comfort. Listen to your body. Listen to your mind. And that's really all we can do. Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad that I finally did this. And I feel good about it. And I feel good about reading this year. I've actually yet to read a 5-star book, which I'm kind of sad about. But regardless, there is still so much time left in the year. I hope that you got something out of this, even if my tips were very lacking. I think it's just a worthwhile reminder. So if you feel so inclined, it would be really great if you would subscribe. I am going to try, be more consistent, have more content coming out soon. And I'm excited to share it all with you. Carly, you want to help me say bye? Bye! She looks so pissed.